want to know if anybody knows what the bean is, just the plain bean. Does anybody know what that bean is? Great Northern. Great Northern. Oh, a good bean. It is a Peruvian bean. It's a yellow bean. Here's the bag. It says Peruvian beans. They have a creamy yellow color when you buy them. Sometimes they're called canary bean. But once you cook them, they don't look yellow anymore. I'm not sure why. I wanted to say to you why. How many of you remember why you have beans every day? Because it helps moderate blood sugar. So we especially encourage eating a half a cup at breakfast. But you don't have to make them fancy. We just cook ours. After they're cooked, we add salt, onion granules, and garlic granules, and that's it. Nothing else. You don't even have to do that. You could just maybe put some salt. Now, I want to tell you the way I do them, though. A lot of people say, I can't eat beans because they cause flatulence or gas. And so we treat our beans a special way so they don't do that so badly. The beans that we cook for breakfast, we first hydrate them. You get a dry bean, you hydrate it. I want to say that with garbanzo beans, I have to hydrate almost 24 hours because they're so hard. And to get them to take up all the water I want them to take up. So I just put them in a dish on the table and let them sit 24 hours. Then I rinse them and put them in a Ziploc bag and freeze them. It denatures some of the enzymes that contribute to the flatulence. Then they need to be in the freezer about 24 hours, but you're not limited to that. I usually freeze mine and keep them on hand. So they could be there 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months before you use them. It's really nice to have them in there already hydrated and frozen, and you have company show up and you go, oh my, just pull them out. And if you have a pressure cooker, throw them in the pressure cooker. We did these Peruvian beans today. They had been hydrated and frozen, and then we put them in the Instant Pot for 14 minutes. They're really soft. We could have done it maybe 12 minutes. You can figure that out. I think that's art, not science. Anyway, we do encourage beans of all different kinds, lentils, whatever, at breakfast. Then, so you had the yellow Peruvian bean today. And you had the waffle. This waffle is similar to Kathy's waffle that she served last Thursday, except it doesn't have dates and it doesn't have garbanzos. It has very simple ingredients. We can go ahead and give the recipes out, by the way. It has sunflower water, sunflower seeds, not very many, and oats. And then my husband one day said, oh, you have leftover brown rice? Oh, put 1/3 of a cup of that in there. It'll make them a little lighter. So we did, and it worked nicely. And salt. And have you ever made waffles and you just had oats in there? They come out kind of white unless you put a sweetener or something. So we decided on a sweetener. We cut an apple in quarters and threw 1/4 of an apple, raw apple, in there. And it made it turn golden brown. It was so nice. But we were using the whole food. We did blend it, but it was the whole food. All right, so these waffles, sunflower oat waffles, are super for freezing. Make them and let them cool, and then put them in a Ziploc bag and put them in your freezer. And you have instant breakfast when you need it. And they're a lot cheaper than the ones you buy in the store and a lot healthier. The strawberry jam, so-called, is simply frozen, unsweetened strawberries. I bought them at the grocery store. A pound of strawberries, And dried pineapple. If you can find it without sugar, the better. This one was low sugar. Low, not no. Low sugar. And so I put the dried pineapple in the bottom of a Tupperware. And I used dices. I was able to get pineapple dices. If you get pineapple circles, then you have to take a knife and cut them smaller. Put them in the bottom of your Tupperware. Put your pound of strawberries on top and add a quarter to a half a cup of water. Put the lid on the Tupperware and put it in the fridge overnight. The strawberries will thaw. Their juice will go down into the pineapple along with the water you put in there. And the pineapple will get softer so that you can blend it. Don't give your blender such a hard job. And so, of course, I have a Vitamix, so I probably could do it without soaking it, but I never do. I want the pineapple to blend up well, and it sweetens those strawberries. So that's what it is, strawberries and dried pineapple. That's your strawberry jam. By the way, that freezes well too. Even though the strawberries were frozen to begin with, you can refreeze once you make it into the jam. Then you have something else in your freezer when you're in a pinch and need something fast. The next thing you had was the taco salad. I forgot to give you my chili recipe, but you probably have a favorite. But you know, when you make taco salad, you don't have to make chili. You just cook pinto beans until they're nice and creamy and yummy, and just put pinto beans on your taco salad. So for our taco salad, we like to layer cooked brown rice first. Then we crumble some healthy chips. These were the healthy ones we're getting now. Wild roots, red quinoa, chia. We found these at Sam's Club. And so we crumble a bunch of those so that we sprinkle that then over our brown rice. Then we put a healthy version, a healthy portion of chili over top of those. Then our lettuce and tomato. And then if you have time and have the ingredients, cucumber, black olive, whatever. How about some shredded carrot, shredded purple cabbage, or shredded white cabbage. Really good on taco salad. Then we put lemon Italian dressing. You had that the first night. Do you remember the lemon Italian? It's kind of sweet and sour at the same time. Just a squirt of lemon Italian. And then cashew pimento cheese sauce. It's a nice addition without having cholesterol. You can buy cheese that is vegan, but it's still such a high fat. I would rather use the cashews for my fat and blend them myself. And you have the recipe for that cashew pimento cheese sauce, I think. If I didn't give it to you tonight, I'm giving it to you Thursday, because it's also going to be in the lasagna on Thursday. Is it on today? It isn't, is it? It's okay. I really like basmati rice. Why do you think I like it? Because it smells like popcorn when it's cooking. It smells wonderful, and after it's cooked. So I like to buy brown basmati. It's really hard to find. You usually find white basmati. Look for brown. The cashews, we get the raw cashews. These were from Sam's Club. They don't always have them, but otherwise a health food store or order online. I did bring tonight, I need to talk, the sesame tahini dressing you had last night is made with Beirut tahini sesame paste, and my brand is the Beirut brand, and we get it at Country Life and at Rocky Mount Health Foods in Virginia, where we live. I brought it for you to see because you can get it online. You just need to know what it looks like. I really like it in the glass jar. Can't get the glass jar through the mail. They only send the plastic. This one's plastic. But it's worth it still. And it comes in a pint or a quart. It does not separate hardly at all. It does not go to the bottom and get hard and dry. You can stir it so easily. I refrigerate mine when I get it so that it doesn't separate. And so that's that. The last thing I'm going to tell you about was the soup. And it was fresh green pea soup. You have the recipe. It has cashews in it. It has salt. It's probably higher sodium than is ideal, so don't have it real often. But if you're having a special occasion, it's really tasty. So once in a while, you can have that. But it's a neat way to use green peas, and a tasty way. So you just blend it and serve it. But you did see on the recipe, they recommend cooking the peas in hot water first because you're using frozen. If you're in a hurry, rinse those peas under some hot water and throw them in the blender with everything else. They don't have to be cooked. Have you ever eaten raw green peas? Oh, yes. So it'd be okay to have them raw. They don't have to be cooked. All right. Enjoy, and we'll see you tomorrow night. Is there a question? Yes. Yes, and I've grown mortgage lifter tomatoes. Yes, same story. Isn't it a great story? Well, and like I said, that bean has another name if you go online, Azteca. And so who knows, maybe the Dove Creek company liked the name mortgage lifter better and used it for a sales gimmick. I don't know. I buy them straight. Oh, I didn't bring it tonight. I'm sorry. I had the bag last night. Dove Creek Bean Company, I think, or Dove Creek something. If you Google it, it'll come up. And Dove Creek, Colorado, that's the name of the town, and they grow them there especially. But I think they are grown other places too. It just happens that Dove Creek was the brand I got in touch with, and they were delicious. And when you soak them 24 hours, they are so big. Mm-hmm. Did it look the same? Okay, great. Vermont Bean Company. So Colorado doesn't have the corner on the market. All right. I'm not finished yet. Okay. Are there any questions or further comments? Yes. Oh, wonderful. She found raw cashews at Kroger. Do you know, in 2007, we started a we started a little lifestyle center that was going to be outpatient. So it was in Rocky Mount, Virginia, and the patients were going to come at night after they'd gone to work all day and come home. Then they would come at night and go through the CHIP program. And so it's like 23 days, you know. We didn't go straight through. We gave them weekends off. When we were applying for our nonprofit status, I was getting my recipes ready, and I'm going, okay, I'm going to teach them how to make waffles. Got to have raw sunflower seeds. This is 2007. It's not that long ago. But they were not to be had in Rocky Mount, Virginia. Hardly in Roanoke, Virginia, which is the nearest large town, large city to us. And so I'm filling out the 1023, I think it's 1023, to get the nonprofit. And I said, I need to have, along with my lifestyle center, a little resource area. because I'm going to have to provide some of these things I'm teaching people to use. And so they approved it. So I started out with just a little table and stuff with some raw sunflower seeds, things they couldn't find elsewhere. Well, now it's a store, a resource center, and we still do programs there, but not as many since we're out of town. But so you may have trouble finding things. But it's encouraging to me to know that you can get raw ones at Kroger. I think probably Whole Foods, but we don't have those in where I live. Different places where they have bulk foods, Trader Joe's, places like that, you can probably get them. But when we're out in the country somewhere, we either have to order online or something. So that's good news, Kroger. Oh, Pa's Pickles. They come from Country Life. But right now, it's my understanding that Country Life is no longer shipping to this area except maybe by UPS, and that's so expensive. And they're in glass jars, and they're heavy. And so I would say if there's a volunteer here today who would open a little health food store right here in Amity, we could get pickles in here. But, yes. That would be good. I don't know where you order Pa's Pickles from. Country Life obviously knows. It is Ma and Pa, Pa's Pickle, P-A''S. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great. The- right. I'll bring a jar tomorrow night, and you can take a picture with your phone and take it to the Glenwood store and ask them, would you mind carrying this? I can tell you that where we do find it oftentimes is at the ABC. The ABC in Scottsdale, Arizona, I know has it, but I don't know about all the other ABCs. So, yeah, it's hard to find sometimes. They do make not just the cucumber pickle, the cucumber chip, the pickle chip, but they also make a pickle relish, which we like to use in tofu egg salad or potato salad, things like that. All right. Other comments, questions? I didn't have anything in the food tonight that had gluten in it, but that doesn't always happen, so I want to remind you that if you have allergies, tree nut allergies, anything like that, to let me know so that we can make sure you don't get something you shouldn't get. Dr. Kelly, you're not ready yet? Please, would you like a mic?
Can you all hear me? This announcement doesn't need, they have to be here to. So this is my plea. Please stop by me. If you realized that you were signing up to get blood work done on the 30th of this month, and you signed in the correct place, fine. But I think some people signed there thinking that it was the regular sign-up sheet. So I just want to make sure I have the correct count. So I'm going to take a moment and tell you who signed up, and if it's okay, I know that Jimmy Kiesler is supposed to be down. How about Anna Chirenza? Okay, you're down for the blood work. Constance Nelson? Yes. Okay. Melody Kennedy? Okay, so we don't know. Oh, okay, I know Melody. Okay, Georgetta De Weber?
I've already had it done, so I probably signed up on the wrong place.
Okay, so you were just signing.
You need a pen?
I've got one right here. Victoria Kritiu? Okay, so you were signing up just to sign in, and your mom, the both Victorias. Okay, so that was no. And Henny Holman, were you signing up for the blood? Okay, and Byron Reynolds.
He's not.
You're just signing in.
He was just signing in.
Okay. Okay, oh, that's right. And Trey Gallagher, that's another student. So they might have been just signing in.
Might have been. I don't know.
Okay. I'll put a question mark, and also for the other student. And Wanda Hayward?
She is going to she's doing the lab work.
Okay. Carlota Tejada, she is too, and so is Landy. And Lisa and Joe Beck, that was a yes. Yes, okay. Thank you. I'm done with my announcements. If anyone else wants it to sign up for the blood work on the 30th, please let me know.
We are ready for you, Dr. Kelly. What's tomorrow? Wednesday. I want to say to you that tonight you received a recipe that you didn't taste. It was the blueberry sauce, and that was just so you have another alternative sauce to put on your waffles. And when we do waffles at home, we don't always have a richer sauce. We use home canned or store-bought unsweetened applesauce. We'll heat it up and have it warm. And we will put a little peanut butter on the waffle, a little applesauce on the waffle. And you know I'm famous for fruit salad. We'll put fruit salad on top of the warm applesauce. And then we'll put a little bit of strawberry sauce if we have some. But it's just a special topping. We really major in apples in various forms, whether it's fruit salad or applesauce. Are you ready, sir?
Yes.
All right.
If my microphone works, we'll be good. I'm going to need a little bit of help from you before you disappear. These we're going to hand out as soon as I tell you, just in a minute. Well, that'll be fun. You'll get to know them, I guess. Is this on? You can hear me okay? My microphone? All right. So, have you ever heard about people whose eyes are bigger than their stomach? Or kids, anyway. You know, I was always told that when I was a kid. It says, your eyes are bigger than your stomach. And the only way Mom could know that was that when I got through eating, there was still food on my plate. But anyway, which of course went into the refrigerator so that the next meal I could eat it. But I bit off more than I could chew, or my eyes are bigger than my stomach. I don't have everything ready tonight. Now, there's two reasons for that. I'll take all the heat, but I do have something I'm going to give you. But it's because I cannot really give you an incomplete risk assessment, because if information is missing, your risk will be misrepresented, and I'm sure you wouldn't want that. You would not want it to tell you that you're about to die when you're in good health, or that you were in good health when you were about to die. That's just extreme to illustrate the point. So So I needed to get some more information from some of you, actually quite a few of you, and I've already gotten it from about half a dozen. But what we do have is we have the lab report that from those of you who got a blood test, we have a printout, paper form, which we want to give you. Those who do not have a questionnaire, a lifestyle health questionnaire, that if you get a lab report and you want to do that, and you will fill it out completely before you go home tonight, I can still, because what I'm going to do is tomorrow night is when I'm going to give you the assessment with your risk assessment. Because if I gave them, I have 2 people that it's ready for, but I thought, why do that? Because everybody else would be mad at me. So I'm not even going to give the 2 that I have it ready for. And the reason I have it ready is their form was complete and their labs were present. So anyways, Sally's now going to give you the lab report. She's going to do her best not to give you somebody else's. And
what if the reason you couldn't finish was because you didn't have information?
yes, I'm going around and going and getting it
today?
from people. Yes. And the other thing is, on some of you, the lab report at the top has a little note that I penciled, like lifestyle question mark. So if you see that on yours, that means I don't have a lifestyle form from you. If you want to do one, you can. You don't have to, though. It's all right. I mean, I don't particularly recommend that these healthy young children over here and over here and over here fill out one of those lifestyle questionnaires, because it won't really provide any useful information, and I'll spend a lot of time getting it ready. So let's not do that. All right. So while she's doing that, so you do it right. Let me make sure that we've got it right. You're only half mad at me because I don't have everything, but at least I have the lab report, and I'm going to go over that with you, okay? So we're going to talk about it. And those of you who don't have any labs, you should stay, because I'm also going to show a video about diabetes tonight if we have time. And then we'll discuss that some. But the discussion about these labs, and I'll show one on the screen up here, so you don't even have to have one in your hands. I'll show one. I've taken the name and identifying information off, so you don't know that it's who it is, and may not even be on this group. But it's so that you can see what kind of report and what the numbers mean. So, okay. I'm going to try to put that on the screen here if I can. Oh, I also want to have thank our video, audio-visual people, because mostly Jonathan, but they've gotten it so that we tested the video and it was working properly.
I'm going to need to call out a few names because I don't know.
Sure, you go right ahead. So let's see. Does that look like it's showing the whole?
Georgetta,
I don't think it's showing the
Lynn
whole
Dowdy,
thing. I need to make this a little smaller.
Linda Kirk, Glenda Perry. I need to learn these names. Carla Riddle, I know Carla, she's not here.
Okay.
Kendall Smith, David Stout.
Yeah, I've learned over time it doesn't do me any good to talk while you're looking at your reports. The first few minutes, you can't hear anything I say. So once you get your reports, you can look at them. There's 3 pages, well, two and a quarter. And I will be going over them one page at a time, talking about the labs that are relevant to what we're doing. You got them all out? There were 19 people? Okay, so 17 people. Oh, I could have used one of these. Anyway, 17 people should have these, okay? And some of you turned in lab results from your own, doctor's office or whatever, and I've got those and put those into the system already. All right, so let's talk about it. Wow, that's hard to read, isn't it? Well, anyway, so the first thing on this is a glucose. So this is the blood glucose value, okay? And usually we are interested in it in a fasting state, okay? The fasting blood sugar is the measure that we're most interested in. But we didn't have a way to arrange it so that you could be fasting when we got the blood test. So we have a glucose number that isn't that helpful. And in fact, what's going to happen is many of you, it's going to say it's high because you were not fasting. And the fasting blood sugar is always lower than just a random, blood sugar, especially if it's when your blood sugar is the highest. We'll talk about that in the presentation tonight. But your blood sugar is highest about an hour to 2 hours after eating. And so, all right, the next one is the hemoglobin A1c. That's a measure that we use to determine what is your average blood sugar for the last 90 days or 100 days or so. And a good number, I didn't bother telling you about the glucose because it's not valid, but anyway, a good fasting blood sugar would be under 100, okay? A good hemoglobin A1c would be under 5.7, but ideal would be closer to 5, okay? So at 5.7, we would say you're in the low pre-diabetic range, okay? And then the next one is something called BUN. This is not talking about your buns. It's talking about your blood urea nitrogen. So this is a measure of that tells us something about how well your kidneys are functioning. And then there's the next one is creatinine. And the creatinine, and you should be able to see, well, I don't know if you can see that on here or not. Sorry. Well, let me try making it bigger, and then I can just scroll. So, oh, I didn't think of that. I don't have to show this whole thing at once. So, can you get it? Is it getting up big enough you can read it yet? Not quite? Okay, we'll go some more. Okay, that's about as big as I can get. Yeah, I should have thought of that. They say that as you get older, your memory actually doesn't get that much worse. It just gets slower. So it takes me a while to remember how to do this stuff. So anyway, we're at the creatinine. And the creatinine is a measure, again, that especially with the blood urea nitrogen, that we get a sense of the efficiency and the health of your kidney function, okay? You know what the kidneys do, the main thing they do, right? They filter the blood, right? You know that? So if you have a kidney disease that's really bad, you have to have what? You have to have dialysis. You have to have an external filter. And so, all right. Sometimes you'll see creatinine that says it's low. Actually, a low creatinine is a good thing unless it's in the presence of harmful symptoms. In other words, if you're a healthy person and especially this happens with young people or with total vegetarians, oftentimes the creatinine will be low, and that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's more concerning if it's high. All right, then what's the next one on the list? The next one on the list is eGFR. Can you see it? Anyway, that's the estimated glomerular filtration rate. Say that real fast. So, estimated glomerular filtration rate. So this is the rate at which your kidney is filtering. Okay, and this is one of the key measures that if it gets really low, that then you may end up having somewhere around 20-something, you would probably be needing dialysis. But even before that, so if it's less than 60, what does it say here? 50, yeah, greater than 59. Over here on the far, I should have done that, and I didn't do that. I should explain these columns. So, obviously, this is the test. This is the test value. This is indicator if it's out of range. These are the units of measure, and then this is the reference range, is what it's called, okay? And I think it's important that I explain to you the reference range. I'm sorry I didn't think to do that earlier. Because most people would call this the what? Range. Normal range. That's what they would call it. And that's not exactly a correct way to think of it. Let me tell you how we come up with this reference range. And on the report, it does say reference interval. It does not say normal. And the reason is that the way we come up with this range is we did a large sampling of healthy people, and we took their number, whatever lab it is, we took that number, and we charted it, and it makes a bell curve, right? Because there's some people that are healthy people that's up towards the top, and there's some healthy people down towards the bottom. And we end up with a bell curve. And then we take a range that covers 95% of the people. Okay? So that means what? If we take 95%, if this range includes 95% of healthy people, what can you tell me about 5% of healthy people? They're outside the range. No, they're healthy. At least as far as we know they are. But so my point is, that's why if you have a number that's outside the reference interval, you have to have someone with some clinical experience to know whether that is problematic or not. And usually, if it's right at the edge of the range, it's nothing to even worry about. Now, of course, the fact is that there are some people who are unhealthy, and they are within the reference range. So again, that's why calling this normal or healthy is not a good way to think about it. This is the typical range of that lab value for apparently healthy people. Do you want to add anything to that, Dr. Kathy?
I think you said a good job.
Okay.
It's just where most people fall, and I think you're going to get some other numbers where we really don't want to be within the reference.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. That's where I'm going to go a little bit later. That's right. In many cases, you don't want to be typical or average. So, for example, well, no, I won't go there yet. All right. So now that I backtracked and explained the range, so we were just talking about the GFR. Most people don't put the E on it, but to be completely accurate, this is an estimated number. It is not actually a direct measure. Okay. And then we have something called the BUN/creatinine ratio. Remember, and I told you those. So from starting with the BUN down to this ratio, those are all related to kidney function. And the last one, the ratio, is a measure of how well hydrated you are. That's one of the common ways we use it, is to see, are you getting enough water? Did you know that I did a rotation one time when I was in my training with a physician who was specialized in pain management. And you know what he told me? He says, before I even think about giving medication to a patient in pain, I want to make sure that they're sleeping enough and drinking enough. And he didn't mean alcohol, of course, he meant water. And so that is so true. You can find relief from pain, from headaches to joint pain, variety kinds of pain that will resolve with good hydration. So this is, and if you're low, again, if that's on the low side, I think that's good. But it's when it gets a high that then we start to be concerned. All right, the next measures there, I'm not going to talk much about. They're just called your electrolytes from sodium on down. And I'm going to, at the end here, I'll let you all ask questions. But I'm just going to go over the things I consider to be the most important. So if we get down to the AST and the ALT, those are measures that primarily tell us something about this health or stress on your liver. So in today's world, in America, you know, the most common liver disease, the most common liver disease is actually non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Okay? Used to be called steatohepatitis. That's what I had to learn in medical school. But in common sense, it's basically the result of a lifestyle and a dietary pattern that is causing the buildup of fatty tissue in the liver. And it hinders the liver. You know, you might not be aware of this. Let me tell you something very interesting. You know that there's more than one kind of fat on the body, right? There's the fat that is subcutaneous. That's the kind that makes us feel nice and smooth and keeps us warm. And ladies have more of it than we men do, and makes them so nice and soft. The other kind is the type that is visceral fat. It's actually fat that's around the abdominal organs and the internal organs. And that same kind of fat can build up in almost any kind of tissue. You know, have you seen some of the commercials about, I forget the brand, but anyway, certain kind of beef. And they talk about it being marbled, you know, like that was a great thing. Well, you know what the marble in the beef is, right? This is fat. And so, they don't, you know, the beef is muscle. So if I gain enough weight, if I eat more calories than my body uses, it will store it. Our body will not voluntarily turn loose of 1 calorie. It holds on to it if everything's working right. And so puts it here and over here and, you know, different places where you have your own special places. You know, we talk about love handles. But anyway, everybody, I mean, some people, it goes on their hips and this part. You know, I won't point to all the places. But anyway, it goes to different places. So just because your waist isn't big doesn't mean you don't have some. So why am I telling you about this? Because it turns out that fat is hormonally active tissue. Fat releases hormones and signals to your body. And it also does something else that's even probably worse. In organs like the pancreas and the liver, it actually is toxic to those cells, the other cells. Because when our body cells, they're designed to have a limited amount of adipose, we like to call it, fat tissue, inside the cell. But when I eat enough calories and don't use enough of them, my body will force cells to store more fat. It's like, dude, do your part. We've got all this fat here, so you take some, Okay, obviously, this is silly. I'm personalizing this. But the point is, every cell in your body will have fat in it, and that is toxic. And so we now know, for example, we'll talk about this a little bit later, more, but we now know that insulin resistance is the primary cause of type 2 diabetes, and the primary cause of insulin resistance in a normal human being is excess caloric intake and storage of fat. So, that was long. The computer went to sleep. I don't know why it goes to sleep on such interesting topics, but it does. So anyway, we need to scroll. I need to scroll because, there's vitamin B12. All right, that is an important measure if you are eating plants only, especially if you're eating only plants. But even if you're eating almost only plants and very little dairy or meat or whatever, because the animal products have B12 in them. Okay, there's no doubt about that. It's got it. It's not a very good source of vitamin B12, but it is a source. Okay, a much healthier source would be to take some kind of a vitamin pill. Okay, but if you get low on vitamin B12 long enough, which can happen in a matter of a year or two, some people longer, some within months. But if you're short on B12, you can damage your nerve tissues in your body in a way that it's not reversible. Okay, and if it gets bad enough, this is pernicious anemia is what it's called, and if it gets bad enough, it can cripple or kill you. So anyway, we don't want any of that, so that's why we check B12, especially for the vegetarians. And here in this case, no issues here for this person. All right, let's go down further to the next one. What's the next thing on the list? It's lipids, but that's not really, that's just a title. So it's cholesterol, total cholesterol. And the cholesterol is what we heard about last night, remember? It was essential, your body has to have cholesterol. But it makes all it needs, so it's not an essential nutrient. You don't have to get it, from Well, where would you get it? If it was essential that you have an intake of cholesterol, where would you get it? There's no plants. Right, it would have to come from animal products. It doesn't have to be meat. Cheese is a great source. I mean, if you really were low on cholesterol, you could eat some cheese and you'd just pump it right up. That was supposed to be humorous because you don't want to have more. Yes, sir.
Well, I understand that cholesterol can be found only in animals with organisms in liver.
Yeah, that way I won't have to repeat it.
All right, no worries. So I understand that cholesterol only comes from living organisms, other than if it has a liver or anything related to that of a liver.
So you're
or has a mother.
So you're asking a question?
Yeah,
Is that correct? Are you telling?
So the question is, how can a person, let's say, have high cholesterol if they are vegan?
Well, it turns out that your body. So that question I can easily answer. The other one I was a little shaky about. So the answer is that our body makes cholesterol. We heard that last night, remember? And they actually even explained to us that if you eat a large amount of saturated fat and or trans fat, you stimulate your liver to make more cholesterol than is healthy. And I can explain that to you. You know what the function of cholesterol is? It's one of its most basic functions is that we have fats in our bloodstream, okay? Triglycerides, different kinds of, that's what lipids actually means, basically fats. What is your blood mostly made up out of? Water, yeah. Thank you. Mostly it's aqueous. Now, we all know that water and oil or whatever, fats and water don't really mix well. One is polar and the other is nonpolar. And if you remember from your high school chemistry, those two don't mix well. You have to have something to make them mix. And what is it? It's the soap. But it's also, really, soap is a saponification agent, okay? It's something that allows a polar molecule and a nonpolar molecule to actually mix, okay? And so cholesterol fills that function, basically, in our body. So if I eat, the more fats that I eat, especially saturated trans fats, it requires my body to make more cholesterol. And it will go way high, and even though I'm totally plant-based, because I can get plenty of fats and oils from plants. So, yes, ma'am. Here's another one.
So if you're vegan and you're not eating fats and your cholesterol is still high, then what?
Okay, so the question is, if you're vegan and you're not eating animal products and your cholesterol is high, what does that mean, right? This is what you're saying, basically. How can you have a high cholesterol and you're not eating any cholesterol intake and you're not eating a high-fat diet?
Plant-based
Yes.
diet and no
Okay.
minimal fat.
Yes, okay. Of course, I wouldn't want to diagnose this on just that information, but what that sounds like is familial hypercholesterolemia. That's a condition where genetically caused makes your liver produce cholesterol without even having to be stimulated by excess fat. And I have a good friend who fits exactly your description. He's a physician, by the way, and he had cholesterol close to 300 often. He was total vegan. He exercised a lot, and if he did everything that he could do with lifestyle, he could keep it down under 240. But that's still at a dangerous level. So he was one that felt he should take some medicine and that's a good time to explain to you. This is another thing I feel bad about is so many of Americans. Do you know that the average American is on how many medications? Did you know what the number is? I told you how many servings of fruits and vegetables we ate. Well, the average American is on more than 3 medicines. Now, but in my own experience of working with patients, almost none of them can tell me how the medicine works. They don't know. Well, I don't know. This lowers my blood pressure. Well, do you know what it does to do that? You know, that kind of thing. And most people don't know. Well, that's okay. Well, they're not a doctor. They're not a nurse. But that's a problem because you should know. For example, statins, which have become quite common. Statins work by inhibiting the mitochondrial function in our bodies, and in the liver, it affects the way an enzyme works, and so it sort of inhibits this enzyme so that our liver is incapacitated from making its cholesterol as efficiently as it would like to. So it doesn't remove the stimulus to produce cholesterol, it just makes the liver weak, so it really can't make that much. Now, turns out that the liver is not the only thing that has mitochondria. And so a lot of people that take statins have body pain because it affects the mitochondria and other parts of the body as well. Oh, thank you for that reminder. Turn mine off. It's even more embarrassing when you're up front when that happens. So, I don't have time to explain every medicine, and I know I kind of jump around a bit, but it's just how the thoughts come to mind that I think will be useful. Yes, it's the last bit about statins. So what I said is that statins, because they impair the functioning of mitochondria, and mitochondria is the energy plant, we say in the cells. When your other tissues in your body besides your liver, when they are affected, it can cause various symptoms. And one of the most common ones is actually body pain. And if you are taking a statin, and you need to, like my friend I mentioned that had the high cholesterol, then you should take CoQ10, in my opinion. I recommend anybody who takes a statin to take CoQ10, which is basically an antioxidant that helps remove some of the ill effect from the statins. So, all right, let me get on with this. So we're talking about cholesterol and the ideal. I think he talked about it last night. Do you recall, anybody? Make us proud. What was the ideal level for cholesterol if you want to avoid heart disease? Oh, wow. Who said that? You did. Yes, 150. It was so good, I wasn't expecting anybody to remember. But yes, 150 or under. And so, but it's not essential. You can be healthy with a cholesterol probably of 170 or 180, depending on what else is going on in your lifestyle. Okay, I was like, remember I told you, I think the first night, didn't I ask you, what's the best exercise? Or was it? No, it was a different group. I remember it was last Thursday night. Well, anyway, so let me ask this group. So what's the best exercise? Those are good answers, but the real answer is the one that you do, okay? So the ideal might very well be walking, but if you can't walk, and I have had patients that they don't either have legs or they can't use those legs, they can still exercise. And so the exercise that you do, that's the one that really helps you, not the one that you should do. Okay, next thing on the list is triglycerides. And triglycerides are another one that can have an ill effect on our circulation and cause atherosclerosis and so on. And so we monitor that kind of like we do cholesterol. However, I think I was telling you that the effect is only about 1/5 the effect of the cholesterol. So it is a negative, but it's not as big a problem as cholesterol. Triglycerides, they're multifactorial. But basically, simple sugars, simple carbohydrates tend to elevate it. That's not the only thing. And another thing I will say about it is the triglycerides, they're labile, we say. In other words, they can change. You could test your cholesterol one day after the last day, and it would change very little, but the triglycerides could be very different. So it has a lot to do with what you've eaten recently. Anyways, it's not so much about fat, although fat intake affects it. I wonder how. Let's see. I've got this thing plugged in. I'm not sure why it goes to sleep. Maybe just take 1 second here and see if I can't tell it to stop going to sleep. Settings. I used to know how to do this, so I could tell it. Where is it? Display. Oops. Anybody here know what I need to do? You can tell me. Sleep better. Oh, well. Well, I'm not. Oh, power and sleep. Here it is, power and sleep. Sleep. Never. Turn off after. Well, we'll go for 5 hours. So I can talk for 5 hours now without. I know you're worried about that. Okay. Anyways. I can't talk for 5 hours if I wanted to. Okay. The next thing is HDL. Do you remember from last night? What was HDL? That's the heavenly darlings. Anyway, this is the good. And remember, remember Dr. No, it was, goodness gracious, Darren Morton, Dr. Morton, the last guy, the one with the funny accent. He is the one that mentioned to us that the HDL is, or as he says it, HDL is like the garbage truck that comes around and picks up or empties the rubbish bins. Okay? So the HDL is sometimes called good cholesterol because it, in general, has an effect of removing cholesterol from the vessels, whereas the LDL is the other way around. The LDL is sort of depositing it. Yes, ma'am? Can it be too high? I imagine it's possible, but I've never heard of it or seen that. Most people who have a very high HDL are considered to be blessed. Well, congratulations. Congratulations. Yeah, that's not a problem at all. Okay? The next one on this list is VLDL. Okay? So there's the good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay? As we say. So the good is the HDL, the bad is the LDL, and the ugly is the VLDL. So this is, in the last few years, or decades, we've come to realize that the very low density lipoprotein is also a significant risk factor, and so they've added it to our lab reports. You can see the range is much less than even the LDL. So the next one down is the LDL, and this is the low-density lipoprotein, and there is good pathological evidence, okay? From pathologists, those are the ones that do autopsies and study mostly tissue. Well, they study tissue. I was going to say mostly dead bodies, but they study excisions and biopsies. Anyway, they have been able to discover and show that LDL is a molecule that creates injury to the blood vessel. Do you know what a plaque is? I mean, we talked about it a little bit last night, and I said that I had mine checked one time to see how much plaque I had. And the fact is that plaque can be thought of sort of like a scab that you get when you injure your skin. See that? So this is the exothelium, the skin, but the blood vessels have a lining called endothelium, and when they get injured, they in essence, the plaque is there to protect the injury. But if the injury continues long enough, it builds up until it becomes a blockage. So can you imagine if you were to see someone, there are individuals, it's sad that this is true, but there are individuals who have a condition that causes them to pick at themselves, and they, even to the point of bleeding, and I mean, a normal person would say, of course I need to stop picking at it, but they can't stop because of their mental condition. So they end up with a terrible looking body and skin. Well, the same thing is happening to your inside of your blood vessels. You just can't see it. And so that's LDL. Now, then they have the ratio. Since you have something that is good and something that's bad, the way that you can make it so you can factor both of them into a single number is to make a ratio. So you put the bad stuff over the good stuff, and so the higher that is, the worse, right? And the lower the ratio is, the better. So that's the reason that we produce a ratio, is just a way to look at because like she asked, can the HDL be too high? Well, if the HDL is quite high, what's going to happen to the ratio? So whenever the denominator on the bottom is large, it makes the ratio small. Anyway, so that's probably the most useful single measure to look at, I would say, probably, in looking at your risk. And you can see the reference range right there, to 3.6. Interesting.
Does that fall into the ideal range, or is that?
Should
it be different from that? That's the normal range.
Oh, this is the reference interval, yes. So you're asking what would be ideal? Yeah, well, I would say that the ideal would be certainly under 3, maybe closer to 2.5. But that'll be shown on your lifestyle assessments. We give there not the reference interval, we give the ideal range, okay? So when you get that, you're going to see this is what's considered the ideal range. And it's typically smaller than this and lower. It's on the low side of the reference interval. All right, but that was a great question. All right, TSH. Oh, well, here you can see this is where they break it down now. It's telling you that the average risk is for a man is to have a 3.6 and a woman 3.2, okay? And so if you have one ratio of 1 or 1.5 for a woman, you have half the risk. So I don't know how much risk you want, but you can just pick it out right here. 2 times 3, so on. Okay. Oh, I know. When I gave that 3, I was just thinking about total cholesterol to HDL. My apologies, Rob. I was, does it have that here? No, it doesn't. On this one, it doesn't give the total to HDL. I think that they used to put that on the lab reports, but now they've gone more to the LDL to HDL ratio. In the old days, it was total cholesterol to HDL. So that's why the numbers are lower for the ideal. Okay. Speaking of that, do you remember from last night, what percentage of the deaths in the United States are from heart disease? Well,
1 in 3.
Yeah, about a third, right. About one third of Americans die from heart disease. So it's still our leading killer, even though, we've done a lot of, it's improved. The rates have improved. All right. What's next on here? There's TSH. Okay, you know what that is, right? Thyroid stimulating hormone. So this is the basic screening test we get to see if your thyroid function looks to be appropriate. If we wanted to be absolutely certain, or if we suspected there was something wrong, we would get there's 3 other numbers that we might get to look at your thyroid function. But this is the basic one. And the ideal is to have it in the, more or less, somewhere in the middle of this reference interval. Somewhere around 2 or 2.5 or so is pretty good. But I'm not going to go into it because that's a deep, what should I say? Anyway, it's somewhat controversial and it's there's a lot of differing opinions. But the reason that we do check it is because if you have an inactive thyroid, it can cause you to gain weight. It can cause you to have excess weight, and so we want to check that whenever we're doing a lifestyle program because people are expecting to lose some weight as they make some changes. But if your thyroid function is off, that might not happen. Okay, then the next thing is vitamin D 25-hydroxy. So this is the blood level of vitamin D that is most representative of your vitamin D status. The average American is below the optimal of 30, okay? And so there's a lot of supplementation. A lot of people are on vitamin D. This one I'm trying to look to see. Yeah, okay, if you let me go to the next page, because the next page has some interesting explanations about this that we should look at. See, what I'm on 65, so this should be 66. Yes, so at the top of this page, there is, and you'll see the two ranges here, okay? There's 20 and 30 are the two basic thresholds. So that some of the people like Dr. Hollick, Michael Hollick, they're listed under number 2. He was one of the pioneers in working on this vitamin D, and bottom line is he's pretty convinced that it should be above 30, okay? But the Institute of Medicine, anyway, the bottom line is it says here, a vitamin D less than 20 nanograms per milliliter is considered a needs supplementation. It's too low if it's less than 20. Some of those who are stronger advocates think it should be 30 or more. And I have some good doctor friends, Adventist doctor friends, who think that it should be 50 or more. Well, it's not toxic until it's over 100. So I don't argue with anybody. I do personally, what I do is if a person is below 20, I recommend supplementation and soon. And especially right now because we have the SARS-CoV-2 virus, and it's going to stay in circulation on the planet for some time. I don't know if it's even possible that we could get rid of it, but it's going to be around. And we know vitamin D is an important part of having a good immune system. So you want to keep your vitamin D, in my opinion, somewhere closer to 30 than anywhere else. All right, I've got here first, and then you.
For a low vitamin person like I am, I didn't expect, because I used to take sporadically, plus that I feel like I'm seeing the sun quite a bit. But anyway, what's the dose that you recommend daily to raise that level?
Well, if a person is just somewhat below 20, then probably 5,000 units. Some people would use 10,000 units a day and check it in 3 to 6 months, okay? But if you're really, really low, I have seen people actually that were closer to 7 or 8. And I recommend higher dosing for that. But the thing is, you'll find out. Some people respond more, they seem to absorb and benefit more from 5,000 units than other people. Some people need 10 or 20,000 units to really start making the number change.
Something that helps the absorption. Some people take it with calcium. Some people take it with vitamin C.
Yes.
Anything that helps?
Yes. Yes, I'm aware of that. And my experience is that the calcium is not necessarily going to help absorption, but the vitamin C, I've seen some evidence that seems to indicate that can. Yeah. But I think the reason people take calcium with the vitamin D is especially if you're thinking about bone health. Okay. All right. So the next thing on here is a complete blood count where we look at your various blood cells, white blood cells, red blood cells. The white blood cells we don't really look at that much, but what that has to do with is if you have infection in your body or your body's fighting infection, that will tend to be higher, like it says here, above 10 or 11. If you have a leukemia, for example, or the numbers might get low, and that could be an indication of a problem if you have low numbers. Red blood cells, of course, carry the oxygen in our bodies, and they're filled with the hemoglobin. So you're interested in knowing that you're... the reason why I like to check this is that if we're going to put a person on the exercise program, I like to know that they have good oxygen carrying capacity, because if they don't seem to have much energy and they can't exercise, it could be because they are anemic. Let me tell you something else that I just discovered recently. I had a couple of people that had recovered from a COVID infection, and they had a blood test about a month to 6 weeks after recovery, and they were both anemic. And one of the things you may be aware is that COVID seems to produce a tremendous fatigue and lethargy and just no energy. And so I hadn't read about this, but I plan to do some digging and see. But it's if you are anemic, you don't have to have COVID to be weak. If your blood cells get down to 6 or 7, you're going to feel like there's no energy, and you could be otherwise perfectly healthy. So it may be something that if you do feel extremely weak after COVID, you might want to ask about getting a red blood cell and hemoglobin count. Yes, Lynn.
You know, you hear so much information, and I'm sure sometimes I forgot, but I heard that with a vitamin D level of over 50, that nobody has died from COVID with a vitamin D count over 50. Now, that's curiosity at this point, but
Well, thank you for that little tidbit. I'll have to do a little digging. That's the kind of thing that stirs my curiosity. I would not doubt at all, from what I do know already, that having a higher level of vitamin D would reduce the death rate and the severity. I wouldn't be surprised if that's so, but I don't either have proof of that.
some of my practitioner friends recommend that if you are experiencing an assault of some kind on your body and you are maintaining a level of vitamin D, you can go to 50 to 60,000 units per day for 3 days, then back off for 3 days, then increase it again for 3 days.
Yes.
When you're experiencing an assault, and apparently the danger of toxicity is very, very low.
Yes, I agree with that. And I think I even know who probably gave you that advice, because I know one of my good friends who's a practitioner, an Adventist, and he recommends that pretty strongly. Yeah. I'm not a vitamin D expert, okay? I just know the basic stuff. I have friends that are much more knowledgeable. Okay, my preferred way, to me, when I have low vitamin D, what that says to me is the first thing I need to do is spend more time outdoors and in the sun, because that's the way primarily that our body gets the vitamin D naturally. And my experience has been most of the time that getting your numbers back into the ideal range is most healthful if you do it through the body's normal mechanism. But if you cannot do that, or you can't get out, or you live on the North Pole, so for 6 months out of the year there's no sun to get, then of course you're going to have to either eat whale blubber or take some vitamin D. Both are sources of vitamin D. Okay. Well, if you live in the north, you probably, eat whales anyway. All right. There's so much to talk about. So I'm going to talk about platelets because more than once, I've had a patient that came for a lifestyle change and found that they had abnormal platelet count and discovered they had some type of a cancer, some type of a bone cancer. So it is good to get these tests occasionally. Now, if you have a doctor and they're taking care of you on a regular basis, most likely they're checking these occasionally. But if you are not seeing a doctor or never have seen a doctor, it's a good thing that you got this blood test, because you might find something you didn't expect. These are different kinds of white blood cells there, okay? The lymphocytes, the lymphs there, is a type of a white blood cell. And the reason I'm going to mention it is because since we have this viral pandemic in the planet, the lymphocytes are the ones that would be elevated after you have developed adaptive immunity, after your immune system has been exposed to COVID or to the virus, to the vaccination. Your lymphocyte, now you would have, for a while your body is developing that immunity, those will be elevated. Okay? By the way, do you know, just a little factoid, I don't know if these factoids are that useful or not. They sort of get me distracted, but I think you'll appreciate this. We now know that of course, we've known for a long time that when a lactating mother, she passes to the baby her immunoglobulins, her antibodies, okay? So the mother's milk has antibodies to the things that the mother has been exposed to in her lifetime, and so she's actually giving the nursing baby immunity to things that she's been exposed to, the baby's never been exposed to. And that's really cool. But there's something else that I thought was really interesting was when we discovered, and it was shown, that mothers can actually have lymphocytes pass to the baby through their milk. So you can not only give them temporary antibodies, you can give them long-lived lymphocytes that are already sensitized to certain diseases. And this is, well, I better not go too far because this one thing leads to another, and then it goes too long. But I will, since I said that, say this part too, and that is, there's some, you may be aware that, what was it, a year or two ago? Anyway, I think it was before COVID came along, there was some outbreaks of measles in the country. And there was one in particular I remember reading about was in California. And, of course, we tend to immediately blame that on the fact that there are children who are not getting vaccinated because various reasons. Their parents don't, either religious or whatever reasons. And so in California, they've actually restricted the exceptions. But when a very careful analysis was done by people that are very knowledgeable about virology and immunology, turns out that actually that problem wasn't caused or the result of or kept going because of a lack of vaccination. What we're finding now is after multiple generations of human beings getting their immunity from vaccination, the strength of the immunity weakens. The thing that, because you pass on, and it's sort of like I said, the children's immunity is being passed along, and their response to the vaccine seems to weaken over multiple generations. So there is something to be said for every now and then somebody getting the disease, because that bumps the strength of the immunity up. But anyway, it's just a little something to throw out there while we're talking about lymphocytes. All right. All right, I think that's all we need to look at that page. We're almost done here. I'm going to look at the last page now of the document, and then I'll take some questions. Okay. Oh, that's a mistake. So, yeah, so there's no, apparently on this one there was nothing. Let me see if on the other one if there's anything. So on the last page, there isn't anything that's a lab. It's just identifying information, which is very interesting. All right, so do you have any questions about any particular lab that we talked about? Lynn?
We're concerned about saturated fats. People dealing with Alzheimer's, some of them say the brain needs fat, you need even saturated fat. And of course, the cardiology people say, no, you don't want any saturated fat.
Yeah.
I'm talking about vegetable saturated fat. What's your take on that? What is the big level?
Well, first off, there isn't any, that I'm aware of, isn't any vegetable fat that unless man changes it, that's saturated. It's usually partially hydrogenated, so it's partly hydrogenated, but I'm not aware of any vegetable fat that's 100% saturated, Lynn. And I'm not sure if that's what you're saying or not.
For example, I have vegetarian butter.
Thank
I have a
you.
vegetarian butter with coconut in it, and each serving has 5 grams of saturated fat.
Okay.
What is that?
So, assuming that it is strictly plant fat, including coconut fat or oil.
Right.
Coconut is one of these, if I'm not mistaken, it's monosaturated, is it not? But at any rate, I'm going to have to say that I am not sure I should try to answer that until I review some of my knowledge about this? It's a very interesting question. But it is, one thing I do know is, and they mentioned that last night, that the main reason that we hydrogenate vegetable oils, which are polyunsaturated in their natural state, which means what this really boils down to is an unsaturated bond is a bond that has a different characteristic than a saturated bond. So if you're interested in looking this up, and you can look this up on your favorite search engine and look up the difference between a saturated and unsaturated. But what happens is that when they hydrogenate it and they put hydrogen atoms on these unsaturated bonds to make them saturated, it makes the oil so that or the fat becomes stiff. At room temperature, it's more stiff, so it's spreadable. If without that, it's like oil, Okay, well, it turns out that actually the oil form is healthier for us than the thicker form, right? And the other thing that happens is when they hydrogenate it, there are bonds that are cis bonds and trans bonds. Anyway, the bottom line is that there's two different ways that the hydrogenation can take place, and if it takes place in one way, the molecule ends up being straight, like a saturated fat, okay? Whereas in the other one, it actually has a bend in it, it has a little kink, and it turns out that it matters to our bodies. By the way, do you know where fats go? The fats that we eat. I know a while ago I told you it goes to fat, but I'm talking about where in your body are fat molecules used. Well, they're used in the lipid bilayer, okay? Right? Have you heard that term? So the cells in our body have a bilayer of a boundary around the cell. And the little, I wish I had a drawing. I wish I was known I was going to talk about this. But basically, you have the little head and then the tail, and these molecules are forming our cell walls. Well, if I eat saturated fats, those saturated fats are used to make cell walls, okay? And as we already said, if I saturate the fat, it makes it stiffer, makes it thicker. So what happens is when my cell wall gets a lot of saturated or trans fats in it, it gets stiffer, and it starts to affect the molecules that are in our cell wall, like transporting glucose or transporting this or transporting that. And those transport gateways act differently. And it turns out that saturated fat, for example, not only affects our cholesterol level, but it actually makes our cell wall stiff enough that it causes us to have insulin resistance, that the insulin doesn't work as well on a gateway that's in a cell wall that's got a lot of saturated fat in it. So that's a very simple, quick explanation of a pretty complicated topic. But the point is that the saturated fats, whether they're plant or animal, would have the similar kind of effect. But I'll do a little review, and I'll be ready to answer more about how you could have 5 grams of saturated fat in a plant-based margarine. Okay, I hope somebody has another question, but a lot easier. Please ask me an easier question.
I think you said that the BUN creatinine ratio was a measure of how hydrated you are.
Yes.
Is it temporary, so that if you're really hydrated right now, it would be one thing, but if is this over time, or is this just an instantaneous?
It's sort of like a snapshot in time.
So it's kind of an instantation of how hydrated you are right now?
At the time we took the blood test.
So is really high or really low mean you're hydrated?
If you're really high, it means you're dehydrated, typically. Okay?
Really high is dehydrated.
So, for example, in the hospital, in an urgent care situation, and I've got a patient that's got some kind of an issue with their urination or with their kidneys, I'm going to monitor that, and when it gets high enough, if it gets high enough, I'm going to put them on a fluid. I'm going to give them an IV because they need to have hydration, okay? And then if it gets down low enough, I'm going to take them off the fluid. So, yes, I see you've got the microphone. Oh, okay. Did that answer your question?
Yes. Is that so? What is the range is 9 to 20? What would you consider dehydrated? Anything above 20?
Well, Well, yes and no, but I mean, it's not unusual to see it at 30 or more for a dehydrated person. I mean, let me just say something. Let me share that. Okay, so do you know how to tell if you're hydrated or not without having a blood test? I mean, there's a lot of different ways, but yeah. So she's talking about skin turgor. Okay, so you take a place and you pinch your skin and hold it just a little bit, and then you let go and see how long it takes it to stop looking like it's been pinched. Okay, and if you're dehydrated, that'll take longer than if you are well hydrated. But there's another way, the simplest way, and that is every time you go to the bathroom, just see how dark the water in the toilet is. If it is dark, you're dehydrated. If it's a little yellowish, you probably are still dehydrated. Because well hydrated, your urine will almost be colorless, and certainly not more than very light yellow. So, I'm chronically dehydrated, and I can confirm it. Anyway, no, that's the simplest thing. We all should try to drink adequate water that our urine is clear or very light yellow. Okay, who else? Are we out of time? I bet we are. We still have 14 minutes.
I was wondering also how stress plays into like your cholesterol or triglycerides maybe, or your blood sugar.
Well, stress, okay, great question. So stress plays into almost every one of these things that we're talking about. It has an effect on the heart disease and cholesterol. It's well established that chronic stress is a significant risk factor for heart disease, okay? It increases the inflammatory state, the CRP and other measures of inflammation. And it also has an effect on blood sugar. I don't know how many of you are acquainted with someone who's diabetic, but a diabetic who has to take a steroid will lose, their blood sugars will just skyrocket depending on how much they have to take. And it just they just can't control the blood sugar with injections or whatever, or pills of steroids. So, and stress produces cortisol, and it is a steroid-type molecule. So if I'm chronically stressed, I'm going to have a tendency to have a higher blood sugar. I'm going to have higher cholesterol. I'm going to have higher inflammatory. I need to be on anti-inflammatories. Yes, sir.
Is it possible for someone to be kind of skinny and still in a danger level?
Can you be thin and still have a danger level of stress? Is that what you're asking?
Not just stress, but like overall, like can some people to be like, well, I'm not, like fluffy.
Yeah, I'm not obese, I'm not heavy,
Yeah.
so I'm at low risk. Yeah, we have plenty of thin people that have heart attacks, so you don't have to be overweight. And diabetics? Yes. Diabetes or high blood sugars increase your risk by perhaps 3 to 4 times the risk of heart disease. That's pretty significant. Oh, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, could you go over a little bit about MCH and some of these other things, lymphs and that sort of thing?
Sure, I can do a little bit. So the MCH is, it's actually MCHC, is the mean corpuscular hemoglobin concentration. I know that just going to roll right off of your tongue. Let's see here. Is this the one that has that? I don't think so. No, it was the second page, wasn't it? Okay, so it's the 6. Okay, I just thought I'd show it here. Okay, so running down the line here, MCV is mean corpuscular volume. So this is basically, that's the proper medical term. But in plain English, what it is what's the typical size of your red blood cell, okay? And there's a reference range that typically is, okay? Then the MCH, so I apologize, I said there was MCH. Yeah, mean corpuscular hemoglobin, that's the amount of hemoglobin in the average red blood cell, okay? And then the MCHC is what I said about the mean corpuscular hemoglobin concentration. So all of these things are little details that helps a physician to determine what might be amiss if, let's say, you're anemic, okay, or some other condition. So it's whole lots of nuts and bolts that, it's difficult. You have to really go to medical school probably to understand that and use it appropriately. The RDW is the red blood cell distribution width. Isn't it RDW? Anyway, it's the range of the size of the red blood cells. And why is that important? Because when you're anemic, your body is going to try to compensate, and it's going to release red blood cells from your bone before the red blood cell is as mature as it usually is. And so whenever we encounter a patient that's anemic, one of the first things we want to find out, is it lack of production of red blood cells, or is it excess destruction of red blood cells, okay? So if you're bleeding internally and your stool is dark or black, then what's going to happen is you're losing red blood cells is why you're low, not that you can't produce it. So anyway, these are some of the things that we look at. So I think I covered all the ones about the red blood cells there. Okay, any other? Yes, B.
I did not know about the.
Yes, the blood test.
Can you tell me where I could go to get a complete? I've never seen anything like this. Usually I go to a doctor and he says, "You're okay."
Yes.
And I don't get any kind of report.
Yeah. Oh, well, okay. So the first part of that may not have gotten on the mic was she missed the blood test, and so she's wondering how she could get one like this with all this information. And I want to just tell you that anything that the doctor has, any doctor we have about a patient, it's yours. You have every right to a copy of it. Now, so you can ask for, and the health facility or the doctor has the right to charge you a reasonable fee. So I just want you to be aware of that. Many patients are not aware of that. So you could, and whenever they get a blood test, they get this kind of a report. So they could give it to you, but they sometimes, well, that's right. Most doctors don't have much time, and giving a patient that kind of report creates all kinds of questions. And so that's why, I spent an hour almost talking to you, and you still have questions, which is good. It can create a lot of uncertainty and make people nervous. And so but I encourage you to get
Any doctor, if I had a form or something, could I have just a blank form and say I want all of this?
Yes, you can tell you.
Uh-huh.
They're doing it for, on the 30th.
That's a
What?
Wednesday night, 30th of this month, right here in the evening from probably 5 to 7 or 4:30 to 6:30. We will be drawing blood, the same panel of blood for only $30.
I'll be here.
Yes, that's the simple way to get a copy soon. But I just wanted you to also be aware that March 30. It's a Wednesday. But anyway, everyone should know. You do understand, right? The doctor, we work for you. You do pay us, right? Or your insurance pays.
At this church. Here.
Yeah, she meant right here, this place. Okay. Yes, I've seen your hand a couple times. Yes. Yes, I will be talking about diabetes and insulin resistance more tomorrow. Tomorrow, the thing I'm going to do that I was hoping I could do today, but I wasn't able, is I will be giving you back now your lifestyle risk assessment. And that's a lot simpler to explain than these things are complicated. So it'll go pretty straightforward, and we'll get those out. That'll probably take us 15 or 20 minutes, I would hope. Yes, and then the rest of it we'll be talking about diabetes.
So will you cover more like how high oil or fat in a diabetic's diet makes him insulin resistant?
Yes, I'm going to be talking primarily about the mechanism and the kinds of foods that affect it. I won't be automatically covering anything about how much. If you all ask questions, I'll do my best to answer that. But I'm more, we only have a certain amount of time, and so, and you can tell I've got all these factoids rolling around in my head, and so I can only cover a certain amount. I mean, if we had days, I'll tell you, there's so many things. I remember, I told you before, right? I was 48 when I started a freshman in medical school. It was amazing. I wish every one of you could go and have the experience of being in medical school. The things that you learn, it just improves your health because you come to understand what an amazing machine it is. If I gave you a Lamborghini or a Bugatti, you would sit in that thing and you wouldn't even want to get any dirt anywhere. This thing is fantastic. Well, that's when you learn about your body. It's way better than a Lamborghini or whatever. But when you learn about it, that's the effect it had on me. It was like, wow, how can I do what I was doing? I used to, I don't need to tell you my sins. But anyway, I wasn't raised as a Christian, and I teasingly said that I started working on my second million because they say the first one is really hard. So I was basically just trying to beat the game. I was trying to be wealthy so I could do whatever I wanted to do. And I didn't even think about health or eating. I ate when I got hungry, wherever the closest place I could get food was. So, and of course, not surprisingly, I had an ulcer at 26 years of age, and I was on my way to some pretty bad, money wouldn't fix what I was about to have. But thank God, somebody, a Christian, persisted and got a study. You know what they did? They fooled me. They came to my house and studied prophecy. Oh boy, that was astounding. I was so amazed at what I was learning. And then, of course, in the process of studying prophecy, you read the Bible, and then you can't read the Bible without learning about the Creator and the Savior, and somebody died for my sins, thank God. And so anyway, I got converted, But the thing that got me interested was prophecy, because you know what? Not only do the prophecies tell what happened, they still go past where we are. There's still more to happen. Oh man, I was really interested in reading about that part. So what is still to happen? Well, anyway, I kind of got off the point there, but so I got interested in following the manual. So when I realized there was a creator, I knew, well, there has to be a design, because my job at that time was software engineer. I was designing software. Well, you cannot sit down and write some program. You have to think about what's it going to do and what do you have to do to make it do that. It takes design. So I figured, well, if there's a design, then the more I understand the design, the better I'm going to function. It reminds me of a doctor friend I have up in Idaho, and he was converted as a teenager, and his whole life was sports. He's very tall, 6'2" or 3", and so he was very good at basketball, and he wanted to jump higher. And he says when he started realizing that healthy living makes you stronger and more endurance, he became a vegetarian just to play better basketball, jump higher. Anyway, all right. Is there another question? I think we're about done, actually. You probably wore out. It's funny how talking like this lecture it's tiring. I appreciate your interest and you staying by and listening. It is tiring for both of us. Tomorrow it'll be more varied, and hopefully it'll be better. All right. Anything else any of you ladies need to say before we dismiss? Okay. Well, I don't know why, but I feel like I should have a prayer. So I'm going to ask you to bow your heads with me and let's pray. Father, thank you for the amazing bodies that you've given us and put us inside. Thank you for your provision for healing. We read the stories from the New Testament especially, but even in the Old Testament, and we can see that you are serious about healing our sicknesses and our illnesses. And so I thank you for that great interest in us. It says even the hairs of our head are numbered. Pray that you'll give each one a safe travel home and help me to be efficient tomorrow and get everything ready so that we can catch up, give them their reports. And again, I just thank you for these amazing bodies.